Might appear like I am stuck in the middle of nowhere, but that is not the case. I know exactly where I am, but there could be a situation where you don't know where you are, and you will need basic human survival skills to get yourself out of that situation. My name is Puneeth Boni, and I've been in multiple survival courses which have taught me this exact thing. Today, I'm going to show you how you can use a basic aluminium can to craft two things which could mean the difference between life or death. One of them is a fishing hook, and the other is a small stove which could potentially help you store flame or even cook upon it. Let's look at the things needed before we get into this. Here are the things you will need. If you observe, I have an aluminum can, I have the tab for the aluminum can, and I have a blade. The tab is very important for our fishing hook, so you must ensure it remains in pristine condition. The aluminum can will also be used for our stove, so even it must be in relatively fine condition. And our blade. The blade can be anything you find in the wilderness that is even a little bit sharp. You must take note, we are working with sharp objects, so you might get cut if you're not being careful. Let's first look at how the fishing hook is made. Let's get started with the fishing hook. For the hook, I will be using a simple tab. If you observe the tab, this will be our angle for the fishing hook, and we will have to make a clean cut about here. This will ensure we have enough space for any mistakes. Here you can observe the break is right there. Now I'm going to tell you what to do. The next step will be very careful. You have to be very careful with this. You have to turn this piece 90 degrees. About that way. If you observe, from the side profile it will appear like that. So roughly the shape of a fishing hook for relatively larger fish. Take note that the size of the tab also affects the kind of fish you have, although not that much. Always remember, a small hook can always catch a bigger fish, but a large hook cannot catch smaller fish. Now, the next step we're going to do with this 90 degrees turned tab is we're going to sand this part into a sharp fishing hook material. So I'm going to use this slab to sharpen it. Once you feel like the hook has been sharpened enough, you can stop. An important note is that tabs are of different sizes, so you must be aware of how thick the tab is, because sometimes cutting the tab might be difficult. So you must make sure you have a relatively stronger person trying to break it, or you must be more careful while breaking it because it could potentially cut you. But always remember, a stronger tab will always lead to a stronger fishing hook. Now when you think it is sufficiently sharp for your reason, then you can just pass a line through the hole you find here. It could be any fishing line you find anywhere near any river, or it could be a foraged line from trees or anything of that sort. Now I'm going to show you how to use the same can we foraged the tab from to construct a stove front. You must be wondering how we're going to make a stove. Well, I'm going to show you. You will have to be careful because this involves a lot of cutting. So you want to take your can and demarcate an eye mentally in the shape of an eye across the front of the can, and you're going to cut along that shape. You don't have to draw it or anything of that sort. Be careful in this step because cans are surprisingly notorious for being sharp. That is the roughly eye shape I was talking about. Now what you want to do is very carefully, because the edges might be sharp. What I usually do is I usually use anything I'm wearing as protection to hold it and then move it out. So you want to open it up as if it's a chamber, and you want to do the same for the other side. Carefully now, ensure not to cut yourself because these edges tend to be very sharp. Cutting yourself can lead to infection in the wild, which could make your position much worse. Now if you observe, we have a small little opening, and now you must be wondering how we'll use this as a stove. Well, I'm going to show you. The finished product will look something like this. This is the stove with the firewood inside, so you must ensure most of your firewood is pointing upwards as the flame will travel upwards. You see, the two windshields we have on either side can really help in concentrating oxygen content into the flame, which can help increase the intensity of the flame. Sometimes, if the wind is blowing too directly into your flame and putting it off, you can definitely turn it right around and prevent any wind from blowing your flame off. And any material you have can go right on top, which can get heated by the heat source right from below. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why we have done all this and how this can be substantiated with evidence right now. You see, according to Gregory J. Davenport, there are two primary steps in ensuring survival. Gregory J. Davenport is a USAF survival strategist, so his advice is really helpful. Step 1 is to ensure you prioritize all your needs. The five primary needs are protection, sustenance, shelter, travel, and health. The stove can also help in sustenance, which means it can help boil water, most importantly. You see, according to J.G. Kaufman, who wrote an article back in 1873 about the melting point of various alloys, he claims that tin cannot melt until you burn it to a degree of 655 degrees Celsius. So it's impossible for any flame you create out in the wild to damage the material around it, which makes this a very reliable stove. Another thing by the CDC is why it's so important to boil water and why you definitely need an open flame out in the wilderness. You see, water contains various pathogens, and no matter how much you filter it using natural means, you'll never truly get rid of the germs. The only way to get rid of all the germs in water is to boil it at a rolling boil for 1 minute, according to the CDC. This stove does exactly that. And there we have it. Our two solutions for extremely dangerous problems out in the wild. Remember, never forget your PSSTH. Protection, sustenance, shelter, travel, and health. And always remember, it's better to not be in a survival situation than to be in one. So don't go searching for one. Stay safe.